nothing is going to bring our friends back. I hope that this investigation creates an understanding that with exploration, there's risk. And without taking that risk and the exploration, the world will still be flat. I hope that innovation continues so we can make the oceans accessible to people like me who got to fulfill a dream. And you still allow citizen scientists to participate in expedition.
They were just very happy to go. Rojas recalled of the passengers crying during her testimony. That's the memory I have. Nobody was really nervous. They were excited about what they're going to see. The reality is they didn't see anything. They didn't see Titanic. The reality is they are dead and they were misled.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. It's been said that Stockton Rush was effectively selling tickets to the Titanic as a sort of Disney ride. Renata insisted that this wasn't the case, but while it may not have been the case for her, it certainly seemed to be an ego thing, like tagging the summit of Everest and getting a selfie, a kind of joyride, something that YouTubers and journalists also did. More vanity, money, and clout for clicks than science. I was also surprised to hear her basically regurgitating Stockton's Kool-Aid. That anything that's experimental can't be classed and thus shouldn't be. It just shows a basic misunderstanding by someone misinformed of the facts. Cyclical fatigue in carbon fiber is something that happens at a measurable and predictable rate. You can't conflate that with starry-eyed explorers going out there with the best of intentions. Renata seems to be pushing sentiment over science and emotions over rationality and even maritime law. What we're seeing here is putting subjectivity over objectivity and then see what happens. Catastrophe. The scary part to me is that after the fact there is still no objectivity. Now the rationalizing becomes denial. Before we get to the rest of this analysis, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Bear in mind, I'll be covering day 4 of the hearing. Hopefully, we'll also be hearing from Triton's Patrick Leahy, a rival submersible operation that was doing things properly compared to OceanGate. Whenever I see the word OceanGate, I kind of think of the words Watergate and just this idea of a gate, some kind of controversy. It's interesting that OceanGate called itself OceanGate. Well, this is a kind of OceanGate, isn't it? If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button and let's get started. So one of the big surprises for me was discovering that Renata Rojas was part of the OceanGate crew going all the way back to the Bahamas. She was actually, I think, kind of working as an unpaid skivvy, involved in the surrounding setup of the sub on the platform, even including her handing bolts to be tightened onto the craft. Rojas testified that beyond issues with the dinghy, there was nothing unusual about the day of the dive. Everything was done on time and they had wonderful weather. But I don't think those who died would say it was so wonderful, and I don't think they'd be commenting about the weather either. What was unusual was that Mission 5 was happening at all, especially given what had gone on in the background just days, before the implosion. For example, there was a loud bang, there was malfunctioning thrusters, the platform had inverted 45 degrees, the platform snagged an obstruction, also the Titan slammed into the platform. And now you want to get onto this craft that's made of carbon fiber and go down to these crushing depths? What could go wrong? Then you had Dr. Stephen Ross describing the chaos inside and outside the sub. He talked about a malfunction. He talked about passengers on board tumbling about, one passenger hanging upside down, another two managing to wedge themselves into the bow end cap. And so this former scientific director for OceanGate, who, by the way, never wrote a scientific paper, also I don't think he was paid at all either. It's almost like he was a volunteer. He kind of gave the whole expedition a kind of credibility, a kind of status that, they were doing scientific work. And there's a really interesting article in kind of an obscure publication, the Brunswick Beacon, dated May 13, 2022, titled UNCW Professor Leads Research on Titanic Expedition. And it really reads it's pretty impressive. Steve W. Ross, research professor in the UNCW Center for Marine Science, will be chief scientist of the 2022 Titanic Survey Expedition commissioned by OceanGate Expeditions of Nassau, Bahamas. Ross will lead an international team of scientists this summer in a first-of-its-kind survey of the marine ecosystems on and near the Titanic shipwreck. This opportunity to be working with some of the best scientists in the world continues to put UNCW in the forefront of marine research. These are his words. He goes on to say, previous dives to the Titanic have focused mostly on the wreck and associated archaeology. We are seeking to compile a list of every living creature we can identify inhabiting the Titanic wreck site to understand this unique deep-sea ecosystem. And so how far did he get with this research? Did he ever publish a paper? According to his testimony yesterday, no, he hasn't. And, a year has gone by. Meanwhile, in this publication, he says, Ross and scientists from the United States, Canada, and the UK will conduct a series of 5 10-day missions that begin and end in St. John's, Newfoundland, aboard a research-class expedition vessel. It all sounds really interesting and really high-level research and exploration. Yet when you see this scientist on the Skype call giving his testimony, one has a very different impression of the whole thing. And so one can't help asking once again, are we dealing with subjectivity trumping objectivity? In retrospect, in hindsight, 5 people have lost their lives. Are we going to find a way back to objectivity where we can look at this in the proper way? Or do we maintain our subjectivity? Do we stay in denial? Because I don't think it's even fair to say that there were problems and issues and perhaps damage just days before the incident. The reality is the sub had problems from the beginning of its inception. Probably the design of the sub was faulty. Probably just the materials that were used were ill-advised. Basically, it was a flawed concept all along, and this made its demise inevitable, an accident waiting to happen.
Was there an alien on board?
Yes.
Does the company know?
The company knows everything that happened on the ship. It was with us all the way.
Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.